I pulled into my parents' driveway that Thanksgiving afternoon, with 2 homemade pumpkin pies on the passenger seat. My mother opened the front door before I reached the porch. My father stood behind her, arms crossed. Mom's voice was cold when she spoke. "You're not invited, Jane. Go home." Through the doorway, I could see my sister Madison, Uncle Robert, Aunt Carol, and my best friend Harper gathered around the dining table. They were laughing, passing dishes, celebrating. Without me, I stood there frozen, pies in hand, trying to understand how my family had just erased me. My hands tightened around the pie dishes. The aluminum was still warm against my palms. I could smell the cinnamon and nutmeg, the scents I associated with every Thanksgiving since childhood. But none of that mattered now, because my own mother was blocking the doorway like I was a stranger trying to break in. "What are you talking about?" I finally managed to say. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. My father stepped forward, still wouldn't look me in the eye. "We know what you did, Jane." "What I did?" Confusion turned to something sharper in my chest. I looked past them into the dining room again. Madison was seated at the head of the table where Dad usually Saturday. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater I'd never seen before, her dark hair styled in perfect waves. She looked like she was hosting the dinner herself. Harper sat next to her, and I watched as my best friend of 12 years leaned over and whispered something that made Madison smile. I felt sick. "Mom, Dad, I need you to explain what's happening right now." I took a step forward, but my mother moved to block me more fully. "Madison told us everything." My mother's words were clipped, rehearsed. "She told us how you've been trying to sabotage her engagement, how you've been spreading lies about Trevor, trying to break them up because you can't stand to see her happy." The world tilted. "That's not true. That's not what happened." I had mentioned some concerns to Madison about Trevor, her fiancé of 4 months. He worked in finance, or so he said, but some of his stories didn't add up. He claimed he went to Penn State but couldn't name his dorm or any professors. He said he grew up in Boston but didn't know basic neighborhoods. Little things that bothered me. Things I mentioned to Madison in private because I cared about her. I never tried to sabotage anything. I was trying to protect her. Harper confirmed it. My father's voice was flat. "She said you've been jealous of Madison for years, that you resent her happiness because your own marriage failed." The words hit me like physical blows. "Harper said that?" I looked through the doorway again, and this time Harper glanced up. Our eyes met for just a second before she looked away, her face flushing red. I moved back to Riverside, Pennsylvania 3 years ago after my divorce. It had been hard, humiliating, starting over in my hometown at 30 years old, but I rebuilt. I got a job as marketing director at Riverside Pharmaceuticals. I helped my parents when they struggled with bills. I visited every Sunday. I organized family barbecues and birthday dinners. I was the responsible one, the dependable one. Madison was 28, still figuring out her life, bouncing between jobs and relationships. I never resented her for it. I tried to help her. Uncle Robert appeared in the doorway now, his bulky frame filling the space behind my parents. "We've all talked about this, Jane. As a family." He emphasized the last word like, "I wasn't part of it anymore. We think you need to take a hard look at yourself. Deal with your jealousy. Until you can be genuinely happy for your sister, we don't think you should be around this family." Madison's face appeared over his shoulder. Her eyes were red, tears on her cheeks. But something about it looked wrong, rehearsed. "Please, Jane, just leave. You've hurt me enough. I need to talk to Madison. Alone. Please." "No." My mother's voice was final. "We're done here, Jane. Go home. Can I at least put these pies in the kitchen? We don't want them." The door closed. Not slammed, just closed. Quietly, firmly, finally. I stood on the porch for a long moment, holding 2 pies that nobody wanted, shut out of my family's Thanksgiving. The November air was cold against my face. I could hear laughter from inside, muffled by the door and walls. They were continuing without me, like I had never been there at all. I walked back to my car. My legs felt mechanical, disconnected. I set the pies on the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. My hands were shaking. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to breathe. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was coordinated. Madison and Harper had planned this, lied together, convinced my parents and uncle. They wanted me gone. But why? I pulled my phone from my purse and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Amanda Price, my lawyer. I'd hired her 2 years ago for a different matter, and she'd told me to call if I ever needed anything. I pressed dial. She answered on the second ring. Jane, happy Thanksgiving. Amanda, I need you to execute the document. Now. There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background, her own family gathering. Are you absolutely sure? That document, if we execute it, it changes everything. There's no going back. I looked at my parents' house. Through the front window, I could see shadows moving, people passing dishes, living their lives without me in it. I'm sure. Do it. Okay. I'll file the paperwork electronically right now. It'll be official within the hour. Thank you. Jane, are you okay? I will be. I hung up and started the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked in my rearview mirror one last time. The house looked warm and inviting, golden light spilling from the windows. A perfect Thanksgiving scene. But I wasn't in it anymore. 20 minutes later, as I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone started buzzing. One call, then another, then another. Text messages flooding in. I glanced at the screen. 17 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, 12 texts. I silenced the phone and walked inside. I set the pies on my kitchen counter and poured myself a glass of water. My phone vibrated continuously on the table. Finally, I picked it up and listened to my mother's voicemail. Her voice was panicked, shrill. Jane, call me back right now. What did you do? Your father is having chest pains. We just got a notice. What did you do? Call me back. I deleted the voicemail and turned off my phone. They chose to believe lies about me. They chose to humiliate me in front of my family and my best friend. They made their choice. Now I'd made mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone still turned off on the nightstand. Part of me wanted to turn it back on, to call my mother and explain. Part of me wanted to drive back to their house and force them to listen. But a bigger part of me, the part that was tired of being dismissed and disrespected, knew I'd done the right thing. By morning, I had 63 missed calls and 42 text messages. I made coffee and finally listened to my voicemails while standing at my kitchen window, watching the sun rise over Riverside. The first few were from my mother, crying and begging me to call back. Then my father's voice, angry and threatening. Then Madison, screaming obscenities. Then Uncle Robert, his tone cold and calculating, telling me I'd regret this. I called my mother back at 8 in the morning. She answered before the first ring finished. Jane. Oh my God, Jane. How could you do this to us? How could I do what, Mom? The house. You transferred the deed. You can't do this. I can, actually. You and Dad signed it over to me 2 years ago. Remember? The silence on the other end was heavy. 2 years ago, my parents were drowning in debt. My father had emergency heart surgery. The medical bills, even with insurance, were crushing. They'd maxed out their credit cards trying to keep up. The mortgage payments were months behind. The bank sent foreclosure notices. They were going to lose the house they'd lived in for 35 years. I used my entire divorce settlement, $53,000, to save them. I paid off their debts. I caught up the mortgage. And to protect the house from any future creditor issues, they transferred the deed to my name. It was my lawyer Amanda's idea. We made it legal, notarized, recorded with the county. They could live there for the rest of their lives, but technically, legally, I owned the house. We never talked about it again. I never mentioned it, never held it over them. I let them live as if nothing had changed. Madison didn't even know about the arrangement. As far as she knew, our parents still owned their home, but I owned it. And last night, I'd executed my right to that ownership. "You can't evict us," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you shut the door in my face." "Jane, please." My father's voice came through the phone now. They'd put me on speaker. "We made a mistake. We believed Madison. We were wrong. Please don't do this." "A mistake?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. "You didn't ask for my side of the story. You didn't call me before Thanksgiving to talk about your concerns. You ambushed me, humiliated me, and chose Madison's lies over me without a second thought. That wasn't a mistake, Dad. That was a choice. We're your parents, and I'm your daughter. That didn't seem to matter yesterday. Jane, we can't move out in 30 days. Your father's health, my job, everything we own is here. Then you'd better start packing." I heard Madison's voice in the background, shrill and angry. "Let me talk to her." My sister's voice came through the phone. "You're destroying this family. You're cruel and heartless, and I can't believe you're doing this over a stupid misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "Madison, you lied. You made up stories about me to turn everyone against me. Why? Because you wouldn't stay out of my relationship. Trevor is the best thing that ever happened to me, and you tried to ruin it. I expressed concerns, privately, because I care about you. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed again. "Jealous of what, Madison? Your unemployment? Your string of failed relationships? What exactly do I have to be jealous of? You can't stand that I'm getting married, and you're divorced and alone." There it was. The real issue. Not jealousy, not sabotage. Madison saw me as a threat to her happiness, because my life hadn't turned out perfectly. Because I'd failed at marriage, I must want her to fail too. "I'm done with this conversation. You have 30 days. The eviction notice is legal and binding." I hung up before she could respond. For about an hour, I felt powerful, justified, strong. Then I went out to my car to drive to the grocery store and found all 4 tires slashed. I stood in the parking lot, staring at my car. The tires were shredded, rubber hanging in strips. This wasn't random vandalism. This was personal. This was retaliation. "Madison." I called the police to file a report, then called a tow truck. $800 to replace all 4 tires. $800 I hadn't budgeted for, but I paid it because I had to. Because this was war now. Monday morning, I drove to work with my new tires, trying to pretend everything was normal. I'd been the marketing director at Riverside Pharmaceuticals for 2 years. I was good at my job. I had a major client presentation coming up on Friday, a pharmaceutical product launch campaign I'd been working on for 6 months. It was the biggest project of my career. At 9:30, my boss, Richard Harmon, called me into his office. "Jane, we need to talk about something." He looked uncomfortable, wouldn't meet my eyes. "What's wrong?" "We received an anonymous email this morning. It contains some serious allegations about your previous employment." My stomach dropped. "What allegations?" "The email claims you embezzled money from your previous employer, that you were quietly let go to avoid scandal." "That's completely false. I've never embezzled anything from anyone." "That's what I thought. But HR requires us to investigate any allegations of financial misconduct. It's policy." "Richard, this is obviously retaliation. Someone is trying to damage my reputation. I understand, and I believe you, but I still have to follow protocol. You'll need to meet with HR this afternoon. In the meantime, I'm going to need you to step back from the client presentation, just temporarily, until this is cleared up." "No. Richard, I've been working on this for 6 months. The presentation is in 4 days." "I know. I'm sorry. Thomas will take over as lead. You'll be credited, of course, but given the circumstances, I can't have you be the face of the pitch right now." I felt the room spin. Thomas was my colleague, decent enough at his job, but nowhere near ready to lead this presentation. And everyone would know why the switch was made. Everyone would wonder what I'd done wrong. I'll cooperate with HR fully. This will be cleared up by tomorrow. I hope so. I met with HR that afternoon. I brought documentation proving I'd never worked at the company mentioned in the anonymous email. It was entirely fabricated. HR cleared me by end of business, but the damage was done. My colleagues looked at me differently, whispered when I walked by. The trust was broken. That night, Madison called me. "How do you like having your reputation destroyed?" she asked, her voice sweet and poisonous. "That was you. The email. Obviously. And there's more where that came from if you don't stop the eviction. You slashed my tires, too. Prove it." "Madison, why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you?" "You exist, Jane. You exist, and everyone compares me to you. Perfect Jane, with her perfect job and her perfect life. Except your life isn't perfect, is it? You're divorced and alone and pathetic. And now you're trying to take away the one good thing I have. The house isn't yours to have. It's mine. It should have been mine. Mom and Dad promised it to me. Trevor and I were supposed to live there after the wedding. You ruined everything." The truth clicked into place. This wasn't about jealousy or Trevor or concerns I'd expressed. This was about the house. Madison wanted the house. She thought it was hers by right, as the younger daughter, as the one who needed help. And when she found out I owned it, she decided to eliminate me from the family picture. "Mom and Dad can't give you what isn't theirs," I said. "Then I'll take it another way." She hung up. 2 days later, Harper appeared at my apartment door. It was late, almost 10 at night. She looked terrible, her makeup smeared, her eyes red. "Jane, please, can we talk?" I considered closing the door in her face, but curiosity won. I let her in. She stood in my living room, wringing her hands. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Madison made me lie. She has something on me." "What does she have on you?" Harper's face crumpled. 2 years ago, I had an affair with my boss at my previous job. He was married. It was wrong. I know it was wrong, and I ended it. But Madison found out somehow. She threatened to tell my current employer. She said she'd ruin my career if I didn't help her. "So you lied about me." "I had no choice." "There's always a choice, Harper. You chose your job over our friendship." I know, and I hate myself for it. But Jane, there's something else you need to know." "What?" "Trevor, Madison's fiancé. I've seen him with another woman, multiple times, at restaurants, at a hotel. I think he's cheating on her." I felt no satisfaction at this news, only sadness. "Does Madison know?" "I don't think so. I was going to tell you before all this happened, before Thanksgiving, but then everything fell apart." "Why are you telling me now?" "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because maybe, if Madison finds out about Trevor, she'll stop attacking you. Or she'll blame me for that too." Harper left shortly after, and I sat alone in my apartment, trying to decide what to do with the information. I could tell Madison about Trevor's cheating. It would destroy her engagement, crush her dreams. It would be revenge. But did I want revenge? Or did I want peace? Before I could decide, my phone rang. It was Amanda, my lawyer. "Jane, we have a problem. Your parents hired a lawyer. They're challenging the deed transfer." "On what grounds?" "They're claiming the transfer was made under duress. Your father had just had surgery when he signed. They're saying he wasn't in his right mind, that you took advantage of their vulnerable situation." "That's ridiculous. He was fully recovered. The surgery was weeks before we signed the paperwork." "I know, but they have a lawyer, and he's found a technicality. There's going to be a hearing. You'll need to testify." "When?" 2 weeks from now." I hung up and stared at the wall. Madison's attacks on multiple fronts were working. She was destroying my professional reputation, my social standing, and now threatening my legal ownership of the house. Every time I thought I'd won, she found a new way to strike back. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "Stop the eviction, or I'll destroy you completely. You have 24 hours. M." I didn't respond, but I didn't sleep either. The restraining order paperwork arrived at my office the next morning. A process server handed it to me in front of my colleagues, and I watched their faces change as they realized I was being served legal documents at work. In the conference room, I read through Madison's petition. She claimed I'd been harassing her, threatening her, stalking her. She included screenshots of text messages I'd supposedly sent, threatening messages about ruining her life. Except I'd never sent those texts. They were fabricated, edited, completely fake. But they looked real. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. If the judge granted the restraining order, I'd have to stay 100 yards away from Madison. That meant no family events, no chance to see my parents, no way to defend myself in person, and professionally, it would make me look dangerous, unstable. I called Amanda immediately. "They're fake," I told her. "Those text messages are fake. I never sent them. Do you have your phone records to prove it?" "Yes. I'll get them from my carrier today." "Good. We'll present them at the hearing." "But Jane, this is getting serious. Madison is playing to win." "So am I." That Friday, I arrived at work to find out my client presentation had been reassigned entirely. Not just Thomas leading it, but my name removed from the project altogether. Richard called me into his office. "Jane, I'm sorry. The client specifically requested that you not be involved." "Why?" "They saw the restraining order filing. It's public record. They're concerned about associating their product with someone involved in legal disputes." "Richard, that restraining order is based on lies. I'm fighting it." "I believe you. But the client's decision is final." The presentation went forward this morning. Thomas led it. It went well. 6 months of my work, presented by someone else, successful without me. I should have felt proud that the campaign worked. Instead, I felt erased. That afternoon, HR called me in again. "Jane, we've received several concerning items. Photos of your car with slashed tires, images of your apartment building, what appears to be documentation of your daily route. Someone sent them anonymously with a message, suggesting you're either in danger or causing danger. I'm the victim here, not the aggressor. We understand that's your position. However, company policy states that employees involved in ongoing legal disputes that create workplace concerns can be placed on administrative leave pending resolution." "You're suspending me?" "It's paid leave. Once the legal matters are resolved, we'll reassess." I walked out of the building with my personal items in a box. Colleagues watched from windows. This was professional death, reputation death, even if it was temporary. At home, I finally broke down. I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by legal papers and termination notices and felt the full weight of what Madison had done. She'd isolated me from my family. She'd turned my best friend against me. She'd destroyed my professional reputation. She'd gotten me suspended from my job. And now she was taking me to court with fabricated evidence. My phone rang. It was Harper. "Jane, I testified for Madison." I closed my eyes. "What?" "The restraining order hearing. She needed witness statements. I provided one. I said you'd made threatening comments about Madison. I'm so sorry." She said if I didn't, she'd destroy me too. "You chose your career over our friendship. Again, I had no choice." "There's always a choice, Harper. You just keep making the wrong one." I hung up. Harper had betrayed me twice now. There was no coming back from that. Monday came, and I went to court. My lawyer presented my phone records proving the text messages Madison showed were fabricated. But Madison cried on the witness stand. She was convincing, vulnerable, scared. Trevor testified on her behalf, said I'd been hostile toward him since they started dating. Uncle Robert testified that I'd always been jealous of Madison. that my behavior had been concerning for months. The judge granted a temporary restraining order pending a full hearing in 30 days. I had to stay 100 yards away from Madison. Professionally, socially, legally, I now looked like a dangerous person. Outside the courthouse, Trevor approached me. Madison didn't see him break away from the group. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "She told me you were trying to break us up. I believed her. You should ask yourself why she needed you to testify. Why she's so desperate to make me look dangerous." Trevor looked uncomfortable. "There's a lot about Madison I'm starting to question. Then question it, before it's too late." He walked away, and I wondered if he'd actually think about what I'd said, or if Madison's hold on him was too strong. That evening, I checked my bank account to pay my lawyer's retainer for the upcoming house deed hearing. The account showed zero balance with a notice. "Account frozen pending legal review." I called my bank in a panic. "Miss Anderson, there's a civil lawsuit filed against you claiming you defrauded your parents. A judge granted a temporary asset freeze until the matter is investigated." "How much is frozen?" "All of it. $42,317. "I can't access any of my money?" "Not until the freeze is lifted." I hung up and stared at my bank statement. Madison had found another way to attack. She'd filed a civil suit claiming I'd defrauded my parents out of their house, and now I couldn't access my own savings to defend myself. I couldn't pay my lawyer. I couldn't pay my rent, which was due in 2 weeks. I couldn't pay any bills. I had $317 in cash and 1 credit card. That was it. Amanda called me that night. "Jane, I hate to do this, but without payment, I can't continue representing you. I'm sorry. You need to find another lawyer or represent yourself. I understand. Thank you for everything you've done." After hanging up, I sat in the dark. I'd lost my job. My savings were frozen. My lawyer had quit. My family had disowned me. My best friend had betrayed me. My professional reputation was destroyed. I was about to lose my apartment because I couldn't pay rent. Madison had won. Or so it seemed. The week before I was supposed to be homeless, I moved into a motel on the outskirts of Riverside. The Sleepy Inn charged $49 a night, and I paid for 7 nights with my credit card, watching my available credit shrink. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and cleaning chemicals. The bedspread had stains I tried not to think about. But it had a roof and a lock on the door, and that was more than I'd have in 7 days if I didn't figure something out. The full restraining order hearing was scheduled for the next morning. I'd represent myself because I couldn't afford another lawyer. I spent the night preparing my defense, printing phone records and bank statements at the motel's business center for 25 cents a page. The courtroom was small and cold. Madison arrived with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Trevor sat behind them. Uncle Robert was there too, arms crossed, looking satisfied. My parents sat in the back row, and when I made eye contact with my mother, she looked away. Madison took the stand first. She cried. She was very good at crying. She showed the judge more text messages, more evidence of my harassment. She described how afraid she was, how I'd threatened her repeatedly, how I'd made her life hell since she got engaged. Her lawyer called Trevor to testify. He described me as hostile, aggressive, jealous of Madison's happiness. He made me sound unhinged. Uncle Robert testified next. He painted a picture of me as unstable since my divorce, resentful of Madison's success, unable to handle my own failures. When it was my turn, I presented my phone records. I explained that the text messages were fabricated. I showed the timestamps didn't match any calls or texts in my actual records. I explained about the house situation, about Madison's real motive, but I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't know the right legal language. I stumbled over procedural rules. The judge looked tired, like he'd heard too many family disputes and didn't want to hear another. He granted the restraining order. 100 yards. Effective immediately. 1-year duration. I walked out of the courthouse, legally branded as a harasser. At work, or what used to be my work, my boss called. "Jane, I'm sorry, but given the restraining order and the ongoing legal issues, we're going to have to let you go. We'll provide 2 weeks severance, but we need your company laptop and credentials returned by end of business today. I'd been fired. I returned my work equipment and cleaned out my desk, while former colleagues avoided eye contact. Thomas, who'd taken over my presentation, looked guilty but didn't say anything. I walked out of Riverside Pharmaceuticals for the last time, carrying a cardboard box with a coffee mug and a framed photo of me and Harper from college. I threw the photo in the dumpster on my way to my car. My apartment lease was up for renewal, and the landlord had already told me he wouldn't renew given my current situation. Without income and with my savings frozen, I couldn't afford first and last month's rent anywhere else anyway. I had 5 days left at the motel. After that, I'd be living in my car. I sat on the motel bed, surrounded by legal papers and termination notices, and felt the full weight of how completely I'd lost. Madison had destroyed everything. My family, my job, my home, my reputation, my finances. She'd systematically eliminated every support system I had. My phone rang. It was Amanda. Jane, I heard about the restraining order. I'm sorry. It's based on lies, but nobody cares. There's something else you should know. The house deed hearing is in 3 days. Your parents' lawyer found more procedural issues with the transfer. They're arguing your father signed under duress because he was on pain medication after his surgery. He wasn't. He was fully recovered. Can you prove that? I don't know. I don't have medical records from 2 years ago. Then this might not go your way. So I'm going to lose the house too. It's possible. I'm sorry, Jane. I wish I could do more. After she hung up, I lay back on the motel bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. I'd used my divorce settlement to save my parents. I'd been the good daughter, the responsible sister, the loyal friend. And where had it gotten me? Alone in a motel room, broke, jobless, and legally branded as dangerous. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is what happens when you cross me. You should have just walked away. Now you have nothing. M. I deleted the text and turned off my phone. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I cried. Not angry tears or frustrated tears, but deep, hopeless, exhausted tears. I cried for the family I'd lost, the friend who'd betrayed me, the life I'd built that was now demolished. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I dried my eyes and made a decision. I could give up. I could let Madison win. I could sign over the house, drop the legal battles, leave Riverside, and start over somewhere else with nothing. Or I could fight back. I opened my laptop and sent one email. To Marcus Chen, my ex-husband. We'd been divorced for 3 years and hadn't spoken in 2. But Marcus was a good person. One of the few people who'd never betrayed me. Our marriage ended because we wanted different things, not because either of us was cruel. Subject: I need help. Please. Body: Marcus. I know we haven't talked in a long time, and I have no right to ask this, but I'm in trouble, and you're the only person I can think of who might help. Can you call me? I hit send and closed the laptop, not expecting a response. My phone rang 30 minutes later. Marcus. Jane? What's wrong? I told him everything. The whole story, from Thanksgiving to the motel room. I expected him to make an excuse, to say he couldn't get involved, to protect himself from my disaster. Instead, he said, I'm wiring you $5,000. Check your account in an hour. And Jane, fight back. You're stronger than all of them. I cried again, but different tears this time. Marcus's money showed up in my account an hour later, just like he promised. $5,000. Enough to survive, enough to fight. I used it to hire a new lawyer. David Park specialized in civil litigation and worked on contingency, meaning he'd take payment from any settlement or judgment we won. He was younger than Amanda, sharper, more aggressive. We met at a coffee shop because I couldn't afford his office consultation fee. I showed him everything. The deed transfer, the bank records, Trevor's emails that Harper had mentioned, Madison's social media campaign, the fabricated text messages from the restraining order. David studied the documents for a long time. Then he looked up at me. "You have a case. A strong one. But Jane, I need to be honest. This is going to get worse before it gets better." "How could it possibly get worse?" He smiled grimly. "Trust me, it can always get worse." David was right. It got worse. 2 days before the house deed hearing, Trevor was arrested. Madison had filed a police report claiming he'd assaulted her during an argument. She had photos of bruises, torn clothing, a destroyed apartment. The evidence looked damning. Except Trevor called me from jail. "Jane, I didn't touch her. I swear to God, I didn't touch her. We had an argument, yes, but I never laid a hand on her. She did this to herself." "Why are you calling me?" "Because you're the only person who knows what she's capable of. Please, I need help." I called David. He agreed to represent Trevor pro bono, sensing there was more to the story. We posted bail and got Trevor released the next morning. Trevor looked destroyed. His employer had suspended him pending the assault investigation. His family was ashamed. Madison had effectively ruined his life with one false accusation. And that's when Trevor decided to tell the truth. We met at a diner outside of town, somewhere Madison wouldn't think to look. Trevor brought his laptop. "I should have come to you sooner," he said, "but I was scared. Madison has things on me, embarrassing things that could ruin my career. But I realize now she's going to ruin it anyway." He opened his laptop and showed me email correspondence between Madison and Uncle Robert. Dozens of emails going back 6 months. They'd been planning this entire scheme together. The plan was simple. Get Jane out of the family picture so Madison could acquire the house. Madison would marry Trevor to appear stable and responsible. Uncle Robert would fund the operation because he wanted to move into the house eventually. He was sick, getting older, and needed family care. The house would become a family compound, with Madison and Trevor living there along with Uncle Robert and eventually my parents. Madison's goal was to inherit or acquire the house, then sell it in a few years and split the proceeds with Uncle Robert. $300,000 house, $150,000 each. Trevor was just a prop, the respectable fiancé to make Madison look deserving of the house. I stared at the emails, feeling sick. Trevor opened another folder. These are Madison's social media campaigns. She planned all of it, the fake profiles, the accusations, the timing of everything. She's been documenting it like a project plan. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because she has dirt on me too. Financial stuff from my previous job, things that weren't illegal but were unethical. She threatened to expose me if I didn't go along with her plan." "So you testified against me." "I know. I'm sorry. But Jane, I can't do this anymore." She filed a false police report. She's willing to send me to prison to maintain control. I'm done protecting her. "Will you testify?" "About the emails, the plan, all of it?" Trevor hesitated. "If I do, she'll destroy me. She has those files. She'll release them. She's destroying you anyway. At least this way you control the narrative." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll testify." David drew up an affidavit for Trevor to sign, documenting everything he knew about Madison and Uncle Robert's conspiracy. It was damning, detailed, and completely admissible in court. But we needed more. We needed to understand the original deed transfer, why my parents had really transferred the house to me. I called the bank that held my parents' original mortgage. After being transferred 3 times, I finally reached someone in the records department who could access old files. "I need information about a property at 4217 Maple Drive in Riverside. My parents, Robert and Susan Anderson, had a mortgage there. I was told the house was in foreclosure in 2023. Let me check." A pause, keyboard sounds. "Okay, I have the file. What specifically do you need?" "Was the house actually in foreclosure?" "No. The account shows they were behind on payments. Yes, but we'd granted them a forbearance plan. 3 months of reduced payments to help them catch up. The house was never in foreclosure proceedings. The room tilted. My parents had lied. They'd told me the house was being foreclosed, that they were losing everything, that they needed my help desperately. But it wasn't true. They were behind on payments, but the bank was working with them. So, why did they take my $53,000? I called my father. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice wary. The house was never in foreclosure, I said without preamble. Silence. You lied to me. You took my money, you transferred the deed, and the house was never actually at risk. More silence. Then my mother's voice in the background, asking who was calling. My father's muffled response. Then he came back on the line. Robert convinced us it was the right thing to do. Uncle Robert? What does he have to do with this? It was his idea. He said if we transferred the house to you, it would be protected from our creditors. We could keep it and keep your money. Then later, when things settled, we could challenge the transfer and get it back. That way the family keeps the house, and we'd have your money to catch up on our bills. I felt like I'd been punched. You scammed your own daughter? We were going to pay you back. When? After you challenged the transfer and took the house back. How was I going to get paid back if you were planning to prove the transfer was invalid? My father had no answer. This was Uncle Robert's plan from the beginning, wasn't it? He wanted the house protected and then recovered. He wanted my money and the house. Robert said you'd never find out, that it was the only way to save the family home. So you chose money over me. Jane, please try to understand. I understand perfectly. You conspired with Uncle Robert to steal from me. Madison just accelerated your plan with her own selfish reasons. You're all the same. I hung up. The betrayal was complete. My parents hadn't been victims of Madison's lies. They'd been conspirators from the beginning. The Thanksgiving humiliation was just the latest move in a long game they'd all been playing. Everyone I loved had betrayed me. My parents for money. My sister for greed. My best friend for career protection. Even Trevor, though he was finally making it right, had testified against me to save himself. I sat in the diner long after Trevor left, staring at my cold coffee. I'd hit rock bottom, but at least now I knew the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, gave me power. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I emailed Marcus again. I need help. Please. He responded within an hour. Anything. We talked for 2 hours on the phone. I told him about Trevor's evidence, about the bank records, about my parents' admission. Marcus listened to everything without judgment. Then he said something that changed everything. Jane, you're not fighting for revenge. You're fighting for your truth. Don't let them make you feel guilty for that. Fight back, win, and then build something better without them. He was right. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. I had 1 week before the house deed hearing. 1 week to prepare my case. 1 week to gather every piece of evidence and build an airtight argument. David and I worked around the clock. Trevor provided his testimony and the emails. The bank provided records showing the house was never in foreclosure. Harper, feeling guilty, finally came forward with recordings she'd made of Madison bragging about her scheme. Harper showed up at the motel on a rainy Tuesday night. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. I've been recording Madison, she said, holding out her phone. For the past 3 weeks. She doesn't know. I recorded her talking about how she manipulated everyone, how she planned your destruction, how she's proud of what she did. It's all here. Why are you giving this to me now? Because I can't live with what I did to you. I was a coward, Jane. I let her use me because I was afraid. But I can't watch you lose everything because I was too weak to do the right thing. I don't forgive you. I don't expect you to. I just needed to do one right thing, even if it's too late. She left the recordings and walked out of my life. I listened to them that night. Madison's voice, clear and proud, describing exactly how she'd manipulated everyone. It was devastating and perfect. We had everything we needed. The night before the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse, watching the sunset. David stood beside me, briefcase in hand. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes. You know this is going to destroy your family relationships permanently. They destroyed them first. I'm just making it official." He nodded. "Then let's win this." The morning of the house deed hearing, I woke up in the motel room at 5 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. My stomach was in knots. Everything I'd been working toward for the past month came down to today. I showered in the tiny bathroom, dried my hair with the motel's weak hairdryer, and put on the one professional suit I'd kept. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I'd lost weight. There were dark circles under my eyes, but there was something else there too. Something harder, stronger. I'd survived Madison's campaign. I'd survived losing everything. And today, I was going to fight back. David met me at a coffee shop near the courthouse at 7. He had his files organized, tabs sticking out of folders, everything color-coded and prepared. Trevor was supposed to meet us there at 7:30. 7:30 came and went. No Trevor. At 7:45, my phone rang. Trevor's number. "Where are you?" I asked. "Jane, I can't do it." His voice was shaking. "Madison came to my apartment last night. She knows I was going to testify. She threatened me. She has documents ready to send to the police, to my employer, to my family. If I testify today, she'll destroy what's left of my life." "Trevor, she's destroying your life anyway. The assault charge, remember? The charges were dropped this morning. Madison withdrew the complaint. She said it was all a misunderstanding. As long as I don't testify against her, she'll leave me alone." I closed my eyes. "She bought your silence. I'm sorry, Jane. I really am. But I can't lose everything. You already lost everything, Trevor. The only question is whether you get anything back." He hung up. David looked at me across the table. "Without Trevor's testimony, we still have the emails he gave us. We still have Harper's recordings. We still have the bank records. It's not as strong. Then we make it work." At 8:15, we walked into the courthouse. My parents were already there with their lawyer, a man named Gerald Briggs, who looked like he specialized in making wealthy people's problems disappear. Uncle Robert sat behind them, looking smug. Madison wasn't there because of the restraining order, but I knew she was watching somehow, probably waiting for updates from Uncle Robert. The hearing began at 9. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She'd reviewed the preliminary filings and didn't look happy to be dealing with a family dispute. Mr. Briggs presented my parents' case first. He argued that the deed transfer 2 years ago was made under duress. My father had just undergone major surgery. He was on pain medication. He wasn't in his right mind to make major financial decisions. My mother was overwhelmed with medical bills and caregiver stress. I had taken advantage of their vulnerable state, essentially coercing them into signing over their house. It was a compelling argument, presented with fake sympathy and real legal expertise. Then it was our turn. David stood up and methodically destroyed their case. He presented bank records showing the house was never in foreclosure. He showed the forbearance agreement the bank had offered my parents. He proved they hadn't been in immediate danger of losing their home. Then he played Harper's recordings. The courtroom went silent as Madison's voice filled the space, describing her plan to acquire the house, to manipulate the family, to destroy me professionally and personally. She talked about Uncle Robert's involvement, about how they'd been planning this for months, about how satisfying it was to watch me suffer. My mother's face went white. My father stared at the floor. Uncle Robert's smug expression disappeared. But David wasn't done. He presented the emails between Madison and Uncle Robert. He showed their conspiracy, their planning, their coordination. He showed how they'd intended to use the deed transfer to protect the house and my money, then challenge it later to get the house back while keeping my funds. Then he called my father to the stand. "Mr. Anderson, did you tell your daughter Jane that your house was in foreclosure?" My father looked at his lawyer, who couldn't help him now. "Yes." "Was it actually in foreclosure?" "No." "Did you and your wife knowingly accept $53,000 from your daughter under false pretenses? Silence. Mr. Anderson, please answer the question. My father's voice was barely audible. Yes. And was this entire plan conceived by Robert Danvers with the intention of acquiring the property and Jane's money while making it appear legitimate? My father looked at Uncle Robert, then back at the judge. Yes. Judge Morrison's expression was ice cold. She asked a few more questions, clarifying the timeline and the intent. Then she made her ruling. The deed transfer stands. It was executed legally and legitimately. The claims of duress are not supported by medical evidence. Jane Anderson is the legal owner of the property. The eviction stands. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson have 30 days to vacate. She paused, then added, I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible fraud and conspiracy. This court does not look kindly on schemes to defraud family members. We'd won, but I felt hollow. As we left the courtroom, Uncle Robert grabbed my arm. You just destroyed this family. I pulled away. No, you did that. I just refused to be destroyed with it. The defamation and fraud lawsuit came next, scheduled for the following week. This time, Madison had to appear. She walked into the courtroom like she owned it, confident and beautiful in a designer dress I knew she couldn't afford. Her lawyer was expensive too, probably paid for by Uncle Robert. David presented our case. Madison's social media campaign, the fake text messages, the damage to my professional reputation, the loss of my job, the emotional distress. Harper's recordings where Madison bragged about destroying me. The evidence was overwhelming. Madison's lawyer tried to argue that it was just family drama, that Madison had been defending herself from my attempts to sabotage her relationship. But the recordings made that impossible to believe. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They awarded me $97,000 in damages. Madison would also have to issue public retractions and apologies on all social media platforms where she'd defamed me. Madison's face when the verdict was read was a mixture of shock and rage. She'd truly believed she'd win, that her manipulation would work on everyone forever. The criminal charges for filing a false police report against Trevor came last. Madison tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that emotions had been high. But Trevor, finally finding his courage, testified. He explained the bruises she'd inflicted on herself, the torn clothing, the destroyed apartment, all staged to frame him. Madison accepted a plea deal. 1 year probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent mark on her record. 3 legal battles. 3 victories. I'd won everything. So why did I feel so empty? 6 months after the last court hearing, I stood in my new apartment in Seattle, Washington. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Puget Sound. The city stretched out below me, rain falling gently against the glass. It was beautiful and strange, and nothing like Riverside, Pennsylvania. I'd taken a promotion at work. After the legal victories, Riverside Pharmaceuticals had offered me my job back with a raise and an apology. I'd declined. Instead, I'd applied to their Seattle office for a senior marketing director position. They'd hired me immediately, partly because of my skills and partly, I suspected, because they felt guilty. The move had been expensive but necessary. I couldn't stay in Riverside, surrounded by the ghosts of my former life. I'd sold my parents' house for $290,000. After paying off legal fees and David's contingency, I'd cleared $223,000. Combined with the $97,000 from the defamation lawsuit and my freed savings, I had enough to start completely over. My apartment was sparsely furnished. I hadn't accumulated much yet. A couch, a bed, a small dining table. But it was mine, bought with my own money, in a city where nobody knew my story. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. How's Seattle? Rainy. Peaceful. Good. Proud of you. I smiled. Marcus and I had been talking regularly since he'd helped me during my lowest point. We weren't getting back together. That ship had sailed years ago. But we'd found a friendship that was more valuable than our marriage had ever been. Another text came through. This one from Trevor. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing okay. New job in Denver. Fresh start. Thank you for giving me the courage to tell the truth. I responded with a simple thumbs up. Trevor and I weren't friends, but I didn't wish him ill. He'd been a victim of Madison too, just a different kind. Harper had tried to reach out several times. Long apologetic emails about how sorry she was, how she wanted to rebuild our friendship. I'd responded once, I forgive you, but I don't forget. I hope you find the courage you were missing. Take care. I hadn't heard from her since. My parents had moved in with Uncle Robert after the eviction. I'd heard through distant relatives that the living situation was tense. Uncle Robert's health was declining, and my parents were now stuck caring for him in his small house. They'd tried to call me a few times. I hadn't answered. Madison had moved to North Carolina to live with a cousin. Her social media accounts were deleted, her reputation in Riverside destroyed. I'd heard she was working retail, struggling to make ends meet. Part of me felt sad about that. Part of me felt nothing at all. I sat down at my laptop and opened a new document. I'd been thinking about this for weeks, and tonight felt like the right time. I started typing. A reflection. A message to myself. A lesson learned. I used to think family meant unconditional love. I learned that real family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest. My blood relatives saw me as a resource to exploit. They lied, manipulated, and tried to destroy me when I wouldn't comply. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. I learned that truth is powerful, that justice is possible, and that walking away from toxicity isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. I lost a family, but I found myself. I lost people who called themselves friends, but I learned what real loyalty looks like. I lost my old life, but I built a better one. If you're in a situation where the people who should love you are hurting you, remember this. You don't owe anyone your destruction. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself, even if it means walking away from everyone you thought you needed. The phone call I made that Thanksgiving wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. It was me saying I matter. My truth matters. And I refuse to be erased. To anyone being betrayed by family, manipulated by people you trust, or told to accept mistreatment in the name of keeping the peace, your peace matters more than their comfort. Your truth matters more than their lies. And your future matters more than their past. I don't hate my family. I pity them. They chose greed over love, lies over truth, and temporary gain over permanent relationships. They have to live with those choices. I chose to live with dignity, honesty, and self-respect, and that makes all the difference. I saved the document and closed my laptop. Outside my window, the rain continued to fall. Somewhere in the city, people were going about their lives, dealing with their own struggles and triumphs. I was just one person among millions, starting over, building something new. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from my new boss. Great work on the Johnson account presentation. The client loved it. Looking forward to seeing what else you can do. I smiled. I was good at my job. I'd always been good at it. Madison's campaign had made me doubt that. But the doubt was gone now. I knew my worth. I poured myself a cup of tea and walked out onto my small balcony. The cold Seattle air felt refreshing against my face. I could see the lights of the city reflecting off the water, the Space Needle in the distance, the mountains barely visible through the rain. This was my life now. Not perfect, but mine. Not surrounded by family, but surrounded by possibility. Not weighed down by obligation and betrayal, but free to build whatever I wanted. I'd fought back. I'd won. Not just in court, but in life. I'd saved myself. And that was everything. Standing there in the rain, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real, genuine, deep peace. I'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I'd lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. I'd faced my demons and won. Whatever came next, I could handle it, because I'd already survived the worst, and I'd come out stronger. I raised my teacup to the Seattle skyline, to my new life, to the future I was building, to second chances and hard-won wisdom, to choosing yourself when everyone else chooses against you, to fighting back and winning, to survival and strength and peace. I took a sip and smiled. I'd made it. Now I had a question for you. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they're not alone in their struggles. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in the darkest moments. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself, that it's okay to walk away from toxic people, even if they're family, that survival and healing are possible, even when everything seems lost. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope that wherever you are in your journey, you find the courage to stand up for your truth and the strength to build the life you deserve. Take care of yourselves. Choose peace. Choose truth. Choose you. And remember, you're stronger than you think.